Chapter 5: What Money is For. The small bet on Ethan's company had not been small for long, and by the turn of the millennium, Ethan had to decide what the money was actually for. It had grown the way he'd known it would, the charmed boy's whim of years ago swelling, quietly, into a sum that mattered, with more growth still ahead as the fixed stars of the impersonal map promised. Added to David's steady Havorson wages, the family stood now on ground the first life Coles had never dreamed of. Not rich, not remarkable, but secure, with savings that did not vanish in a hard winter and a cushion under every ordinary disaster. The armor Ethan had set out to build was built. The family was safe, in the small daily way that money makes people safe. And that was the moment Ethan made himself stop and ask the harder question, the one the comfortable answer would have skipped. Was secure the goal? Or was security only the first thing money bought, and the lesser thing? He had to grow the wealth carefully, whatever its purpose, because money left tracks and tracks made patterns, and patterns were the thing that could expose him as surely as any flare of power. This was the old discipline, sharpened now by stakes. A family that always bought right and sold first, that stepped off every sinking road just before it sank, that turned a carpenter's wages into a quiet fortune with uncanny timing. That family, watched long enough by the wrong eyes, stopped looking lucky and started looking informed. And informed was a question, and questions led to attention. And attention was the one thing Ethan could not afford, from small watchers or large. So he moved the money the way he moved everything, early, small, and never in a pattern. He let some bets lose on purpose to muddy the shape. He kept the family's visible life modest, the fortune quiet and below the surface, growing in the slow, patient way that drew no eye. He made the Coles comfortable, not conspicuous, secure on the surface, armored underneath, and to any watcher only a careful working family that had caught a few good breaks. It cost the starved part of him, the same way it always had. He could have made them rich, truly, visibly rich, with the almanac in his head. The tired poor man of the first life screamed for it some nights. But Ethan held the discipline, because invisibility was worth more than any fortune, and because he was realizing riches were not actually what the money was for. The reframe came slowly, and it changed everything about how he thought of the growing money. Security was the comfortable answer. Keep the family safe and comfortable through ordinary life. But ordinary life was not what Ethan was preparing for. At the end of the map, past the crash and the rise, the tide waited, and against the tide, a comfortable family with a nice cushion would be exactly as helpless as the first life Coles had been, swept away with everyone else. Money could not stop the sky from tearing. A nice house and a full savings account would mean nothing in 2027. But money could buy something the tide did respect, not directly, but as a means. It could buy freedom of action. When the return came, the people who survived would be the ones who could move, who could relocate, fortify, equip, who had resources to convert into preparation the instant the world changed, who were not chained by need to a doomed place or a doomed life. Money gathered quietly and held ready was not a fortune to enjoy. It was latent action, the stored capacity to do, fast and decisively, whatever the coming catastrophe demanded, while everyone around them was frozen by helplessness and lack of means. That was what the money was for. Not riches. Not even security exactly. A war chest quietly built, carefully hidden, growing year by year toward a war that only Ethan knew was coming, aimed not at any enemy he could yet name, but at the day the sky tore, and the only thing that mattered was the power to act. He sat with the reframe one night, and it sobered him, and it clarified him. Because it meant the long game with the money was not, in the end, about comfort at all. Every dollar he steered into the family's quiet fortune was a dollar of preparation for 2027, a brick in a fortress against a siege 3 decades off. The crash he would position them ahead of was not just about protecting their savings. It was about emerging from it stronger relative to everyone else, converting the disorder others suffered into advantage held ready. The rise of the companies he'd bet on was not about getting rich. It was about building, by the time the tide came, a war chest deep enough to matter. He was not managing a family budget. He was provisioning, slowly and in secret, for the end of the world. It put a cold, clear purpose under the comfortable surface of the good years. On the outside, the Coles were simply a careful family doing well. Underneath, every quiet financial move was a move in the same campaign as the cultivation in the dark, and the soothing of his father's question, and the long reshaping of his father's life. All of it aimed, all of it, at the single distant point where the sky tore and helplessness became death. Ethan looked at the growing money and stopped seeing a fortune. He saw a war chest and a war in a clock. Then he went back to the patient work of building it, quietly, invisibly, brick by careful brick for the day, still far off and coming closer, when the power to act would be the only wealth that meant anything at all.